I hereby call this meeting of Norwood City Council to order. Please rise for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. We don't have anyone to do the invocation tonight, so we'll have 60 seconds of silence. Thank you. Now for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen.
Here.
Mrs. Hoover.
Here.
Ms. Royce.
Here.
Mr. Kelch.
Here.
Mrs. Winterbauer.
Here.
Mr. Thompson. Here. Mr. Braden.
Here. All members present. Moving on to amendment of agenda. Item F1, we are removing the minutes from the March 28, 2023 regular meeting. We're also adding the Parks Committee report. That will be J1. And we're also adding Q2, report on accounting methods comments. Mr. Brady.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to amend the agenda as stated.
Motion by Mr. Brady. May I have a second? Mr. Kelch.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kelch. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen.
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover.
Yes.
Ms. Royce.
Yes.
Mr. Kelch.
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Braden.
Yes, sir.
All members present, voting aye. The motion passes. Moving on to item I, we have one request this evening to address council. When I call your name, please come forward. You have 5 minutes. State your name and address and the subject. Mr. Jeff Gurdon.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Gurdon. I live on 2458 Indian Mount Avenue. My name is Jeff Gurdon, and I'm here to comment on the council's last meeting regarding Marsh Park. Pardon me for reading my comments. My father and grandfather were both preachers, and if I don't stay on target, I'll end up speaking longer than one of Bishop James's sermons, which is not as funny if he's not here to talk about that. So there's plenty I could say about the Marsh Park discussion. If you're really interested, let me make you a cup of coffee. It's really good coffee, and it's worth putting up with my 2 cents if I do say so myself. But I've been trying to process my thoughts for the last 2 weeks, and at one point I thought we should impeach all 8 of you and just replace you with horses. There were pros and cons to that idea, the con being that all votes would be nays, and the pro being our housing market would be stable.
Boo. Boo. Boo.
Sorry. So, after I sent the horse idea to the glue factory, I resorted to rereading the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution because I'm just that kind of ideological nerd. There were the typical phrases that caught my attention and got me worked up as Mr. Kelch would during a wrestling match. But I struggled with those words that said, "a more perfect union." I don't like them because they're the most difficult for me to put into action. Those words are hard for our country as well, and it's probably why it took just a couple of months to pen the Declaration and years for the 13 colonies to ratify the Constitution. Our nation's DNA calls for us not to make a perfect union, but a more perfect union. So patriotism means continually working to strengthen that which binds us together. And as any husband can tell you, the worst part of fighting with your partner is that you have to swallow your pride if you want to get to the makeup sex. But I don't have to swallow my pride. I thought that was funny too. I don't have to swallow my pride to be proud of my community and all of you. I know you are all here serving our community, and you have people like me who are going to get up here and bicker at you. But I appreciate who you are and what you do for Norwood. I think back to a council meeting a year ago this month. You all were confronting a resident over the health and safety of her property, and I'll never forget the moment that Mr. Braden volunteered to help this woman with his own personal time. He spoke with empathy and brotherly love, and that one moment is not out of character for him either. I'm reminded of a Facebook post complaining of an eyesore property, and we all know that Facebook comments are where we find Norwood's best and brightest. But instead of being part of that problem, Mr. Braden took it upon himself to do some cleanup on his own. That's the kind of man that I have seen him to be while on council. Now listen, I don't want the rest of you to think that I'm going to take it easy on you, so let me set the record straight. Mr. Thompson, you like ugly women. Mr. Kelch, you can't parallel park. Ms. Royce, you're a lawyer, so just good luck. Ms. Winterbauer, you're too tall and your cider's too sweet. Ms. Franzen, Ms. Albers hates your guts, so good luck with that as well. But Mrs. Hoover is black. And I hope you pardon my sarcasm in the previous comments. But in the previous meeting, Mrs. Hoover's past experiences were called into question. I inferred that discussion to be a polite way of saying that her blackness has caused her to act with a personal vendetta as a councilwoman. First, let me point out that the first rule of council restricts councilors from directly speaking to one another and prohibits personal remarks. In August of 2021, Mr. Miracle, I recall that you politely reprimanded a member of council for merely mentioning that differences in religious beliefs existed between the council members. I would hope that council would hold themselves to their own high standards of behavior. Secondly, this discussion was problematic because it is the antithesis of our entire democracy. To say that one person's voice is unimportant or irrelevant because of their past experience is to ask you all to leave your humanity at the door. Maybe we should call out Ms. Royce. She currently rents because she's probably too smart to buy in this market. But should we void her vote just because she might have a vendetta against landlords? What about Mrs. Winterbauer? Should we tell her to recuse herself anytime Ward 2 was on the table? Because we wouldn't want her personal experiences to bias her in her own ward. I hope Mrs. Hoover has a personal vendetta. In fact, I hope each of you do. If you don't, then I don't know why you are here in this room except for to compensate for your lack of ego. If you don't have some kind of vendetta, then you only exist in this council to maintain the status quo. And I'm sorry if I'm too worked up or passionate about this, and I'll bring my comments to a close. The comments to Ms. Hoover 2 weeks ago caused me to pause and reflect. Ms. Hoover was singled out because of who she is. The validity of her voice on council was called into question because of something that is totally out of her control. And I ask that you all work toward a more perfect Norwood. Let's be proud of Norwood for the right things because we're all neighbors here, and I expect all of you to act like it.
Thank you, Mr. Curtin. That concludes our request to address council this evening. We'll move on to item J1, reports of standing committees of council, parks, recreation, and public places. Mrs. Franzen.
Thank you, Mr. President. To the Honorable Council of City of Norwood, Ohio, we, your Committee of Parks, Recreation, and Public Places, to whom was referred comments about the Marsh Park Survey and an update about the Recreation Department, beg leave to submit the following report. We got updated Recreation Department info from Mr. Gabbard, and we talked about the Marsh Park Survey and referred that back to the council at large to submit to the community. Respectfully submitted by Ms. Emily Franzen, Chairperson, Mrs. Candace Winterbauer, and Mrs. Susan Hoover.
Thank you, Mrs. Franzen. Mr. Thompson.
I would move that we accept the minutes.
Motion by Mr. Thompson to accept the minutes. Ms. Royce?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Royce. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Royce?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, sir.
All members present, voting aye. The motion passes. Moving on to item M1, introductory reading of ordinances and resolutions. Resolution authorizing the city auditor to approve a then and now certificate for the General Fund 1001-0815-57300 to pay multiple invoices in the total amount of $71,303.19 for Norwood to purchase diesel fuel and gasoline fuel from Likens Energy Solutions, World Connect, and declaring an emergency. Mrs. Winterbauer.
Motion to suspend the rules and have all three readings.
Motion by Mrs. Winterbauer to suspend the rules and have all three readings. May I have a second? Mrs. Hoover.
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Hoover. Any discussion? Mr. Thompson.
I was wondering if the Safety Service Director would like to come up and say a couple words about what this is for?
Yes, be happy to do that. So this is in relation to the fuel, gasoline and diesel that we purchased to run the fire trucks, the police cars, all the public works vehicles. So we purchased that from a company that was called Lycans Energy Solutions at the beginning of 2022 and called World Connect at the end of 2022, which gives you the idea of some of the problems that occurred here, which was they were bought and all their processes changed mid-year. So some invoices didn't come when they should have come, they went to the wrong people. We got the final one for 2022 sometime in February 2023. So even if we'd had everything together, we still couldn't have paid that because we didn't get it. The appropriations that ended the year at our last council meeting were the ones that set the final appropriations to be able to pay those bills in the first place, which gave us 4 days left in the calendar year to get that done. We didn't get the certified ordinance down to the auditor's office in time, so the appropriations didn't get added to the keys. Whole lot of things went wrong with that. You can pick a potential issue that may have occurred, and it probably occurred in this case. So we've got all the billing together. Everything is set. It's straightened out with Lycans, but we're here to ask that it now be granted so that we can get that bill paid.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Any further discussion? Ms. Franzen.
I just wanted to note, for the record, for folks that are watching at home, other people, or other times, Mr. Stith has objected to this then and now certificates have been an issue, but from what Mr. Powers has said and from the information that we have in the packet, Mr. Stith has approved this. So just if you're wondering why he's not here to talk about why this might be a problem, it seems that because of the issues, it is not. So I just know that's something that Mr. Stith has brought up. Just wanted to say it out loud for the record.
Thank you. Anyone else? We have a motion by Mrs. Winterbauer, second by Mrs. Hoover to suspend the rules and have all three readings. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen.
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover.
Yes.
Ms. Royce.
Yes.
Mr. Kelch.
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Braden.
Yes, sir.
All members present, voting aye, the motion passes.
Resolution authorizing the city auditor to approve a then and now certificate for the General Fund 1001-0815-57300 to pay multiple invoices in the total amount of $71,303.19 for Norwood to purchase diesel fuel and gasoline fuel from Lycans Energy Solutions / World Connect and declaring an emergency. Resolution authorizing the city auditor to approve a then and now certificate for the General Fund 1001-0815-57300 to pay multiple invoices in the total amount of $71,303.19 for Norwood to purchase diesel fuel and gasoline fuel from Lycans Energy Solutions / World Connect and declaring an emergency. Resolution authorizing the city auditor to approve a then and now certificate for the General Fund 1001-0815-57300 to pay multiple invoices in the total amount of $71,303.19 for Norwood to purchase diesel fuel and gasoline fuel from Lycans Energy Solutions / World Connect and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Braden.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to pass the resolution.
Motion by Mr. Braden to pass the resolution. May I have a second? Mr. Thompson.
A second.
Second by Mr. Thompson. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen.
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover.
Yes.
Ms. Royce.
Yes.
Mr. Kelch.
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Braden.
Yes, sir.
All members present, voting aye, resolution passes. Moving on to item N, administrative reports. Mayor Snyder.
Thank you, Mr. President. A couple of things on the list. The Financial Recovery Commission meeting took place this morning. The appropriations changes, or I should say that they adopted the work that you guys approved at the last meeting. Appropriations changes will be taken care of by the auditor's office. So you'll probably see that in the next, it'll probably come to the Finance Committee and then to City Council for approval to get those appropriation changes in place. Looking at a couple of different projects that are going on, Varleman is, I think, this close to getting their final course. They've got a leveling course on. I think pretty much all the curb work has been completed. At least that's what Clint said. There might be one or two things that need to be done, and maybe a small area of full depth restoration, but that should be completed soon. I think both Varleman Court and Arklow, they did a really nice job on it. I've talked to about 3 people. One person made a point to stop and talk to me about the guys that were there. Apparently she had stopped with her groceries and was carrying them in, and a couple of the guys stopped and were saying, hey, we'll help you carry your things in and stuff. So they are being very customer friendly too. I think that's, so Bruce Construction is doing a great job on all hitting on all the right things. 561, so that is Smith Avenue and Carthage is the plan. That's the big one that will start probably a little bit late summer. We'll see that get started. And they'll start out with curbs and doing all the handicapped ramps and doing all the things that happen first. We'll probably see it run the same type of schedule where they will be working through late summer, early fall, into fall, get a leveling coat on, get all the adjustments. There's a lot of adjustments. And when I say adjustments, that's all the manhole covers that are out in the middle. You've got manhole covers for water lines, you've got manhole covers for gas lines, you've got manhole covers for telephone lines. So that's, water is Norwood stuff. Telephone is Alta Fiber or whatever telecommunications company's running it. You've got to coordinate all of that with them, and then you got to coordinate everything with Duke. So there are going to be a lot of adjustments to get that street leveled back up and in good shape. And I'm sure they're going to have to, since there's not been anything done in such a long time, there's going to be a lot going on. I came down Smith today, right at rush hour, and both lanes were full, and, that curb lane gets used. You want to drive slow because it's rough, but, it is what it is. So that's one. Talking about streets, Forest Avenue, the underpass should be open this week by Friday. We're thinking by Friday, so this weekend, hopefully, we can cut all those long drives around and go right down through there again. That was a major project. Clint reported there's almost 2,300 meters, water meters have been replaced within the city. So they're making good progress on that. I know there's some plans to get the radio read system in place, some towers that actually, they're receiver towers, they're not transmitting, they're just receiving information, but some of those will be going up in certain areas. The development over here at the old hotel site, they're moving forward with plans. There's still a lot going on, a lot of balls in the air, but they are working with our engineering crew on the Crown Avenue extension, which is something we've said they wanted to do to bring it back up through that development area. Let's see, we had a meeting here recently. There is progress. We are working towards securing the train line. It's called the Millcrest Connector, connects to the Walson Way, the Millcrest Connector, and we are working with Norfolk Southern. And we actually, thank you to the Norwood 5K race, actually donated some money. Emily, if you want to talk about that real quick, but donated some money so that we can move that project forward a little bit more quickly. So, and this is really where, these citizen-led activities that are generating some funds that are for the betterment of the city really come in handy. Because if the city would have had to do it, we would have had to go through the auditor's office and figure out where we're just getting. It wasn't a ton of money, but it's more money than, I don't have a checkbook. I can't just write checks out of the city. So it's nice to have that, and we're moving forward with that. I think we're going to move more quickly than we had originally anticipated, which would be really nice to get that Millcrest connector in there. Walked over, let's see, 2 other things. Well, I'm sort of stuttering. I could use a Red 5 coffee right now. That's a plug, But anyways, 2 other things. Forest is opening, Highwire is open now. I walked over to Highwire. It's at 4600 Beach Street, 46. You can tell there's a big clock tower in front of it. It's this new development over there. But you can walk right over there to it. And it was interesting because as I walked over to it, there were tons of people walking to go over that direction and coming away from it. it was really, and what's going to be really fun is when they have their New Year's with a ball drop there, and everybody in Norwood goes there. I'm still pushing for the ball drop if anybody from PLK or that group is listening. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Last but not least, well, second but last, council chambers, I don't know if you took a look in there, but I think you can pop the door open and look in there, and you can see that sort of that vaulted balloon ceiling that's in there. It's pretty neat, but it's going to be covered. So take a look now, but they're making good progress. And then the last thing is, this Saturday from 1 till 3, we're going to have a litter cleanup. It's Saturday, starting at 1. Meet here in front of City Hall. We'll have buckets, we'll have the little picker-uppers, and hopefully we get a crew of 20 or 30 people like we've done in the past. And it's been posted on Facebook. Jennifer Folks and her husband are involved in a group that are putting this on, and we're sort of jumping on it also. We'll try to post it on Facebook. We'll make sure it gets posted on the Facebook page, the Norwood's Facebook page too. But it's from 1 until 3, just to get our Montgomery Road corridor looking good again. And I know Clint has been working on coordinating a Norwood lateral cleanup. We'll see. That's something that normally he gets going. So that's all I had. Couple things. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any questions or comments for Mayor Schneider? Ms. Franson.
Just to piggyback off of what you said, yeah, so we were able to, through the 5K, the nonprofit, secure some money to kind of do the first step to getting to the point where we can see what Norfolk and Southern is willing to give, or what is a fair price, let's say, for the property that runs from approximately Williams Avenue up to Tennessee, I believe, Avenue. So that is the money that we were able to donate. And when I say we, I mean the 5K collectively, not we here.
So participate in the 5K.
So
It's
yeah,
good. It's
you
good
can, if you have run or walked in the 5K, you made a little bit of that happen. So that's cool. And yeah, I'm excited for, hopefully that comes to fruition sooner than we think. If not, that's okay. We've done what we can and we'll keep working on it.
Thank you, Mrs. Franzen. Anyone else? Then we'll move on to unfinished business. Any unfinished business this evening? Mrs. Hoover.
Apologies. I need to schedule a housing meeting. I could have done that a minute ago. On Monday, April 17th at 6 p.m. Does that work for folks? We scheduled it tentatively at the last meeting, but we're good to go.
What date was that?
I'm sorry, Monday, April 17th, 6 p.m.
Any other unfinished business this evening? Ms. Royce?
I just wanted to, the donation drive for Lydia's house has gone long due to scheduling conflicts. So today is the last day to donate. I'm picking up the bins, well, tomorrow. I'm picking the bins up at 4. So if anyone has any last minute donations they want to make, you have the opportunity. And they'll be taking to Lydia's house at 5 tomorrow. So that will conclude the donation drive.
Thank you, Ms. Royce. Anyone else? Then we'll move on to new business. Any new business this evening? I wanted to share with you our next financial recovery planning commission meeting is September the 12th at 9 a.m. So we'll put that on our calendar, and that'll be here. And then also, I would like to schedule a committee of the whole meeting. I didn't double check, but is May the 9th prior, that's our next scheduled, our first meeting in May. If we could have that at 6:30, I'd like to discuss the report on accounting methods comments. Any other new business? Okay, then we'll move on to communications. Item Q1, Mayor Victor Schneider, Mayor's Court fines, March 2023. Mr. Kelch.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move that we receive and file as read.
Motion by Mr. Kelch to receive and file. May I have a second? Mr. Thompson.
Second that.
Any discussion? We have a motion by Mr. Kelch, second by Mr. Thompson. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Royce?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion passes. Item Q2, report on accounting methods comments. Mr. Thompson.
Move we receive and file as if read.
Motion by Mr. Thompson to receive and file as if read. Easy for me to say. Ms. Winterbauer?
I second.
Second by Mrs. Winterbauer. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Royce?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion passes. Moving on to item S, adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn? Ms. Franzen?
I move we adjourn.
Motion by Mrs. Franzen. We have a second? Mrs. Hoover?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Hoover. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Royce?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson? Mr. Braden?
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion passes. We are adjourned.
Is that a record?